There is an hour that belongs to no one, a fold in the night where the world has gone so quiet that even the darkness seems to listen. You know this hour well, though you may not have given it a name. It arrives when the last of the evening's noise has faded, when the hum of the refrigerator becomes the loudest thing in the room, when the glow of a streetlight through thin curtains is the only company left. In this hour, something happens that you cannot quite control. The mind, released from the obligations of the day, begins to wander through corridors that you thought had been sealed shut long ago. Tonight, as you settle into the softness of wherever you rest, allow that wandering to begin. Do not fight it and do not chase it either. Simply let the night carry you the way a river carries a leaf that has fallen from some high branch, turning it slowly, bearing it along without effort or intention. Your body is already beginning to soften. The muscles of your shoulders, which have held so much today, are releasing their grip on responsibilities that will still be waiting for you tomorrow. Your jaw, which tightens more than you realize during the waking hours, is loosening now. Even your hands, curled gently at your sides or resting on your chest, are letting go of whatever invisible thing they have been holding. This is a story about the lies you carry that were never yours to live, about the quiet ache that sometimes rises in the chest when you think of who you might have become, where you might have gone, and what mornings you might have woken into if only some small thing had been different, perhaps a single conversation that went another way, or a door you walked past without noticing it was open. It could have been a version of yourself that hesitated where you leaped, or leaped where you hesitated, and in doing so stepped into an entirely different world. These phantom lives are not strangers to you. They visit in the quietest moments, arriving not as fully formed memories, but as feelings, impressions, a kind of homesickness for places you have never actually been. You might feel it as a pang when you see a photograph of a city you once considered moving to, its bridges lit up at dusk, its streets full of people you will never know. It sometimes arrives when you hear someone describe a career that once called to you, a vocation that stirred something deep and then was set aside for reasons that seemed practical at the time. Or it surfaces in the simplest of moments, standing in your own kitchen, looking out through your own window, and wondering what view would greet you if your life had taken that other shape. Tonight, we are going to sit with these feelings rather than running from them. We are going to explore them the way you might explore an old house at twilight, moving from room to room with a candle in your hand, not afraid of the shadows but curious about what they hold. There is nothing dangerous here. There is nothing that needs to be fixed or solved or overcome. This is simply a conversation between who you are and who you might have been, held in the gentle darkness of a night that asks nothing of you but your willingness to rest. Let your breathing deepen now, not through force but through permission. Imagine that each breath is a door opening just a little wider, letting more of the night air into the room. The air is cool and sweet, carrying with it the faintest scent of rain that fell earlier today, or perhaps of earth that has been warming in the sun and is now releasing its stored heat into the evening. With each exhale, something loosens. With each inhale, something receives. You have lived a particular life. It has a shape and a texture, a geography all its own. There are streets you have walked so many times that your feet know the cracks in the pavement without your eyes needing to look down. People whose voices you could recognize from a single syllable live in your memory. Their laughter a kind of music you did not know you had memorized until you heard it again after a long absence. Habits and routines have worn grooves into your days the way water wears grooves into stone, so gradually that you barely notice the deepening until you realize that this is what your life looks like from above, these patterns, these familiar paths. Yet alongside this life, the one you are actually living, there exist others. They shimmer at the edges of your awareness like heat rising from asphalt on a summer afternoon, always present, always just out of reach. These are the lives that branched away from yours at the many crossroads you have passed through. The versions of reality where you said yes instead of no, where you stayed instead of leaving, where you followed the pull of some deep and unnamed longing rather than the more sensible course. They are not real in the way that your bed beneath you is real, or in the way that the sound of your own breathing is real. Or in the way that the sound of your own breathing is real. They exist only in the theater of your imagination, projected onto the screen of your closed eyelids in fragments and whispers. Still, they feel real. That is what makes them so tender, so worthy of this quiet attention. The ache you sometimes feel for these unlived lives is not a failure of gratitude. It is not a sign that you have chosen poorly or that your actual life is somehow insufficient. It is simply the echo of all that you contain, all the potential that was once spread out before you like a map with 100 possible routes, each one leading somewhere beautiful, each one impossible to travel without abandoning the others. The grief is not for what you lost, because you never had these lives to lose. The grief is for the vastness of what it means to be a person with a finite number of years and an infinite number of possible selves. So tonight, let us honor that vastness. Let us give these phantom lives a moment of acknowledgement, a gentle nod in the dark, before we turn back towards sleep and the life that is waiting for you when morning comes. There is no hurry. The night is long and patient, and it will hold whatever you need it to hold for as long as you need it held. Close your eyes if they are not already closed, and feel the weight of your body pressing into the surface beneath you. Feel the warmth of the blankets or sheets that cover you. Feel the way the air moves across your face with each slow breath. You are here. You are in the life that is yours. Tomorrow, you will move through it again with all its imperfections and surprises, its ordinary moments and its unexpected tenderness. Tonight, though, you are going to visit the others, the lies that glimmer just beyond the edge of what is. Not to mourn them, but to understand them. Not to wish for them, but to feel what they have to teach you about the extraordinary, improbable, irreplaceable life you are already living. Let the journey begin softly, the way all true journeys do, with a single step into the dark and the trust that the ground will meet your foot when it falls. The night is ready, and so are you. Somewhere, there is a city that has been waiting for you. It exists in the real world, with real buildings and real buses that run on real schedules, with cafes that pour real coffee and parks where real dogs chase real squirrels under canopies of trees you have never sat beneath. But the version of this city that lives inside you is not entirely real. It is a city of the imagination, lit from within by a glow that no actual street lamp could produce, populated by a version of your life that is both vivid and entirely made of air. You know the city well, even if you have never lived there. Perhaps you visited once, years ago, and something about it caught inside you like a thorn. The angle of the light in the late afternoon, the way it fell between tall buildings and turned ordinary sidewalks into rivers of gold. The sound of a language you did not speak filling the air with a music you found yourself wanting to understand. Perhaps you stood on a bridge or at a window and felt something shift inside your chest, a feeling like recognition, as though some part of you had been here before, or was meant to be here, or would have been here if the story of your life had been written by a slightly different hand. Or perhaps you never visited at all. Perhaps the city came to you through photographs, through stories told by a friend who moved there and whose life seemed to open like a flower in the telling. You saw pictures of morning light pouring through tall windows onto bare wooden floors, narrow streets where the buildings leaned toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. You imagined the rooftops where someone sat with a glass of wine and watched the sun dissolve into a horizon you had never seen with your own eyes. Something about those images planted a seed, and over the years that seed grew into a whole life, one that you tended in the quietest corners of your mind the way a gardener tends a plot that no one else knows about. In that city, you are a slightly different person, not unrecognizably different, not a stranger to yourself, but altered in ways that matter. You walk with a different rhythm there. Your mornings begin differently, with sounds you have only imagined, the clatter of a tram on tracks below your window, unfamiliar birdsong, and the distant murmur of a market coming to life in a square you could reach on foot if only you opened the door and turned left. Your work is different there, or perhaps it is the same work but carried out in a different context, at a desk by a window that overlooks something other than what you see from your actual desk, something that feeds a part of you that has been quietly hungry for years. Tonight, as your body continues to soften into rest, allow yourself to visit the city without guilt. There is no betrayal in imagining. There is no disloyalty to the life you have built or the home you have made, no betrayal of the streets you actually walk each day. The mind needs room to wander, just as the lungs need room to expand. Holding yourself back from these imaginings is like holding your breath, possible for a time but ultimately at odds with the way you were made. So let the city appear. Let it rise up behind your closed eyes the way cities do when seen from a great distance, first as a suggestion on the horizon, a thickening of the air, then as shapes and colors and light, the faint glint of windows catching the last sun, the dark mass of buildings pressed together like books on a shelf. You are approaching it slowly, carried by the current of this story, the way a boat is carried by a river that knows where it is going even when the passengers do not. Notice that this city feels welcoming. It has the quality of a place that has been expecting you, with a chair already pulled back from a table and the lamp already lit in a window. This is because you built it yourself, over years of quiet longing, assembling it piece by piece from all the fragments of beauty and possibility that drifted through your waking life. Every cafe you have loved and courtyard you have admired, each street that made you want to walk a little slower, has contributed something to this place. It is a mosaic of your own yearning, and it is beautiful precisely because it was never constrained by the limits of any real geography. Here is something worth considering as you drift deeper into the night. The self who would have lived in that city is not more real than the self who is lying here now, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of blankets and the softness of a pillow. That other self is a projection, a story told by the part of your mind that specializes in alternatives and what-ifs, in the branching paths that every decision creates. This part of the mind is ancient and tireless. It evolved to help your ancestors evaluate options, to simulate possible futures so they could choose more wisely among them. But it does not know how to stop. Even after the choice has been made, even after the door has closed and the road has forked and you have committed your feet to one direction, this part of the mind continues to construct the other path and furnish the other room, populating the other life with all the warmth and color it can muster. The result is not quite grief and not quite fantasy. It is something in between, a tender ache that lives in the space between what is and what might have been. If you pay close attention to this ache, you will notice that it is not entirely painful. There is sweetness in it, the sweetness of having once been so full of possibility that no single life could contain it all. The ache is evidence of your depth, of the fact that you are a creature with more dimensions than any one timeline could ever express. Consider the city now, not as a place you fail to reach, but as a gift your imagination has been tending for you all this time. It is a garden you planted in the air, needing no soil, no rain, only the occasional attention of your wandering mind. It has given you something that reality alone cannot provide, a sense of how vast you are, how many selves you contain, how much beauty you are capable of conjuring from nothing more than longing and memory, and the particular quality of light that falls through the window of the place you actually call home. Because here is the secret that the city whispers to those who listen carefully enough. It was never really about the city at all. Bridges and cafes and morning light on unfamiliar floors, these were only the stage set for a version of yourself that you sensed was possible, a self that was more awake, more present, more fully inhabiting its own life. The longing you feel when you think of that other place is not truly a longing for different geography. It is a longing for different experience of being alive, a deeper engagement with whatever surrounds you, whether that is the skyline of a foreign capital or the view from your own kitchen window. This longing is not your enemy. It is a compass, pointing not toward the city you never moved to, but toward a quality of attention, a way of moving through the world with your eyes a little more open and your heart a little more willing to be amazed. You do not need to uproot your life to honor it. You only need to let it teach you something about how you wish to be present in the life that is already yours. The city is fading now, not disappearing but softening, the way a painting softens when you step back from it and let your eyes relax. Its outlines are becoming gentler, its colors blending into the warm dark behind your closed eyelids. It will still be there in the morning if you want to visit again, and it will still be there next year, patient as all imaginary places are, because they exist outside of time and do not age the way real cities do. Let it rest now, the way you are resting. Let it settle into its own kind of sleep, street lamps dimming one by one, windows going dark, bridges quiet under a sky full of stars that have no names in any language you speak. Your breathing has grown deeper now and slower. The muscles of your body have released another layer of tension, like sediments settling to the bottom of a still pond. You are here, in the life that is yours, lying in a bed that knows the shape of your body, surrounded by air that carries the familiar sense of your own home. Outside, the night continues its slow passage, moving from one darkness to the next, unhurried and unworried about where it is going. Rest in this knowledge that the city you never moved to is not lost. Nothing imagined is ever truly lost. It lives in the part of you that can dream, that can wonder, that can feel the ache of possibility without being crushed by it. It has made you richer than you know, this phantom home, this shimmering elsewhere. Carry it lightly, the way you would carry a photograph of someone you love, close to your heart but open in your hands, something to be treasured rather than grasped. The night deepens around you, and the city sleeps as you sleep. Somewhere between the two of you there is a bridge made entirely of longing, beautiful and enduring, holding fast through the dark. There was a time, perhaps years ago, perhaps so long ago that the memory has taken on the soft edges of a dream, when something called to you. Not a voice exactly, though it sometimes felt that way. More like a pull, a current running beneath the surface of your ordinary days, drawing you towards something that seemed to glow with a light all its own. It might have been a kind of work, a way of spending your hours that felt less like labor and more like breathing, so natural that you could not quite tell where you ended and the activity began. Or it might have been a way of living, a philosophy of how to move through the world that asked you to be braver or gentler, or more honest than you felt capable of being at the time. You recognized this calling when it came, though you may not have used that word for it. You felt it in the quickening of your pulse when you encountered it, in the way your mind sharpened and your senses opened, as though someone had turned up the contrast on reality itself. Colors seemed more vivid in its presence. Time moved differently, stretching and compressing in ways that made the clock irrelevant. When you were near this thing, whatever it was, you felt more like yourself than you did at almost any other moment, which is a strange and disorienting thing to feel, because it implies that the rest of your life is spent being slightly less than who you actually are. Then something happened. The calling was set aside, not always in the single dramatic moment of renunciation, but more often through a slow accumulation of small decisions that gradually steered you in another direction. Bills needed paying, responsibilities multiplied, someone whose opinion mattered to you expressed doubt, and their doubt planted itself in the fertile soil of your own uncertainty. growing quietly until it was large enough to cast a shadow over the whole endeavor. Perhaps you told yourself that you would come back to it later, that there would be time, that the calling would wait for you the way a patient friend waits at a restaurant table, reading a book, glancing up now and then at the door. But callings are not patient friends. They are more like rivers, moving always in one direction, impossible to step into the same way twice. The version of the calling that existed when you first felt it has changed, and so have you, and the fit between the two of you that once seemed so perfect has shifted in ways that make it hard to know whether going back would feel like coming home or like visiting a house where you once lived that has since been renovated beyond recognition. Tonight, in the safety of the dark, let yourself feel the weight of this without flinching from it. The calling you walked past is one of the heavier things you carry. Not because you made the wrong choice, but because the choice itself was impossible. Every path forward required you to leave something behind, and what you left behind in this case was a version of yourself that felt most alive, most engaged, most fully present in the act of being. That is not a small thing to set down, and the fact that it still aches is not a sign of weakness or poor decision-making. It is a sign that you are someone who felt something real and has the courage to remember it honestly. Let your body settle deeper now into the mattress, into the pillows, into the quiet architecture of the place where you sleep. Feel how the surface beneath you holds your weight without complaint, how it has been shaped over time by the particular contours of your body, molded to you the way a riverbed is molded to the water that flows through it. You belong here, in this bed and this room, at this specific hour of this specific night. Whatever else is true, this is true also. Now consider this. The calling you walked past did not disappear when you turned away from it. Callings are not fragile things, despite what they might feel like in the moment of their departure. They are more like seeds that, finding one patch of soil unavailable, allow themselves to be carried by the wind to another. The essence of what drew you, that quality of attention and particular flavor of aliveness, did not evaporate simply because the container you first encountered it in was set aside. It went somewhere. It found new expressions, subtler perhaps, less dramatic, woven into the fabric of your ordinary days in ways you might not have recognized. Think about the moments in your current life when you feel that same quickening, that same sharpening of the senses, that same feeling of being more fully yourself. They exist, even if they are quieter now, even if they arrive in less grand packages. Perhaps it happens when you are explaining something to a friend and you find yourself speaking with an ease and precision that surprises you. Perhaps it surfaces when you are working with your hands, arranging something, fixing something, creating order out of small chaos. Maybe it appears in the way you listen to music, hearing layers and patterns that others seem to miss, or in the way you notice details in the natural world, the exact shade of green in a new leaf and how light changes in the 5 minutes before sunset. These are not consolation prizes. They are the calling itself, having found new ways to reach you. The river did not dry up. It merely branched into smaller streams, each one carrying the same essential water to different parts of the landscape of your life. What you mourned as a loss was actually a dispersal, and the mourning itself was a kind of attention, a way of keeping the connection alive even when the original form of it had changed beyond recognition. There is a particular kind of suffering that comes from believing that you have a single true purpose and that if you miss it, the rest of your life is a substitute for the real thing. This belief is understandable, because the moments when you felt that calling were so vivid, so saturated with meaning, that everything else seems pale by comparison. But the belief is also a kind of trap, because it narrows the aperture of your perception until only one very specific shape of fulfillment can pass through it, and everything else, no matter how beautiful or meaningful, gets filtered out as not quite right. What if the calling was never about a specific activity or career or way of life at all? What if it was about a quality of engagement and deep presence, a willingness to be fully consumed by whatever is in front of you? If that is the case, then the calling cannot be missed, because it is not a destination you can fail to arrive at. It is a way of traveling, a manner of paying attention, and it is available to you in any moment, in any circumstance, including this one, here in the dark, listening to these words, feeling the slow rise and fall of your own chest. The person you would have been if you had followed the calling is a beautiful fiction, a story your mind tells about possibility, and there is nothing wrong with visiting that story from time to time. But notice that this fictional self is always depicted at the peak of their powers, always in the golden hour of their achievement, never struggling with doubt or exhaustion or the mundane difficulties that accompany any life, no matter how aligned with purpose it might appear from the outside. The self you imagine is a highlight reel, and you are comparing it to the unedited footage of your actual experience, which is of course going to come up short. This is not to diminish what you felt or to suggest that the choice did not matter. It mattered enormously. It shaped who you are in ways that are still unfolding, and the ache it left behind is a legitimate part of your emotional landscape, as real and as worthy of attention as joy or gratitude or love. But the ache is not a verdict. It is not proof that you chose wrongly. It is simply the sound that possibility makes when it narrows, the echo that remains when a wide open space becomes a particular path with particular walls and a particular view. Let that echo soften now, the way all echoes do, fading not into silence but into the general hum of the night. Your breath is slow. Your body is heavy and warm. The calling you walked past has not forgotten you, and in some deep and untranslatable way, you have not forgotten it. The two of you will continue to orbit each other, catching glimpses from a distance, and those glimpses will continue to stir something that feels like longing but is actually closer to recognition, the recognition that you are a creature of enormous depth, capable of many lives even as you live only one. Sleep is drawing closer now, like a tide rising around an island, gentle and inevitable. Let it come. Let the thoughts about what might have been grow softer, less distinct, blending into the warm darkness the way colors blend at the horizon just after the sun has gone. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to decide, nothing to grieve with the sharp edges of waking consciousness. There is only the slow dissolving of tension, the gradual release of everything that does not serve the simple animal purpose of rest. You are held. You are here. The calling still lives within you, expressed in 1,000 small ways you may not have noticed yet, and tomorrow, if you look carefully, you might catch it winking at you from inside some ordinary moment, reminding you that nothing essential was ever truly lost. There is someone you never loved, or rather, someone you loved only in the quiet theater of your own mind, where the seats are always empty and the performance is always for an audience of one. This person may have been real, someone you actually knew, whose laugh you actually heard, whose face you could draw from memory if you had any skill with a pencil. Or this person may have been more abstract, a composite assembled from fragments of encounter and desire, the kindness of one stranger blended with the intelligence of another and the particular warmth of a third, until the result was someone who never existed outside of your own longing but who felt, in certain late-night hours, more vivid than anyone you had ever actually touched. You may not think of this phantom relationship often during the daylight. The busyness of waking life has a way of pushing these softer aches to the margins, where they wait like shy animals at the edge of a clearing, visible only when everything else goes still. But in the dark, when the noise has faded and the obligations have been set down for the night, they sometimes venture closer, and you feel the weight of a presence that is not quite grief and not quite desire, but something more delicate, a wondering about what it would have felt like to be known by this person, to be seen by them in the particular way that only they could see be known by this person, to be seen by them in the particular way that only they could see. Let yourself feel this tonight without judgment, without the sharp voice that sometimes says you are being foolish or sentimental, or that you should be grateful for what you have rather than dreaming about what you do not. Gratitude and longing are not opposites. They can coexist in the same breath, the way sunlight and shadow coexist on the same hillside, each one defining the other, each one necessary for the landscape to have depth. The relationship you imagine is not a blueprint for disappointment. It is not a standard against which all real relationships must be measured and found wanting. It is, instead, a window into the kind of intimacy your heart is capable of. A map of your own emotional topography drawn by the part of you that knows what you need even when the rest of you is too busy or too afraid to ask for it. Every quality you gave to this phantom lover, each tenderness you imagined them showing, and the moments of understanding you pictured between you, reveal something about the architecture of your own desire, the shape of the space inside you that longs to be filled. Consider this carefully, because it is important, and because the night is a good time for important things. The self who would have been loved by this person, the version of you that existed in that imagined relationship, was not a fantasy. Not entirely. That self was a real part of you, a facet of your being that perhaps has not had enough room to express itself in the relationships you have actually lived. Perhaps it was the part of you that is more vulnerable than you usually allow yourself to be. Perhaps it was the part that laughs more freely, speaks more honestly, reaches out with less hesitation. Whatever qualities this imagined love brought out in your imagined self are qualities that actually live inside you, dormant perhaps, underused certainly, but not fictional. This is the gift hidden inside the ache. The phantom relationship, for all its impossibility, has been a mirror held up to the parts of you that want more room. It has shown you, in its gentle and sideways fashion, what intimacy looks like when it is designed by the deepest part of your nature, rather than by the compromises and accommodations that real life demands. This does not make real relationships inferior. Real relationships have something that imagination cannot provide: the friction and surprise of another actual consciousness, someone who will not behave according to your script, someone whose otherness is itself a gift, even when it is also a challenge. But the phantom fills a different role. It keeps alive the memory of what you are reaching for, even in seasons when the reaching feels fruitless or foolish. It reminds you that your capacity for love is larger than any single relationship can contain, which is not a sad thing but a magnificent one. You are a creature whose heart can build entire worlds for people who do not exist, can furnish rooms with conversations that will never be spoken aloud, can feel the warmth of a hand that has never touched yours. This is not delusion. It is the creative power of longing, which is one of the most human forces there is. Now, as your breathing continues to slow and the weight of the blanket settles more heavily across your chest, let the phantom figure come into focus for just a moment, not with the sharp clarity of a photograph, but with the soft focus of a dream, where outlines blur and what matters most is not the way someone looks, but the way they make you feel. Notice the quality of presence this imagined person carries. Notice how, in your imagination, they look at you with the kind of attention that makes you feel both seen and safe at the same time, a gaze that does not evaluate or judge but simply receives. This gaze is something you have always wanted. It is something every human being has always wanted, from the earliest days of infancy when the face of a caregiver was the whole world, to these quiet adult hours when the need for that quality of seeing has not diminished but has simply become more complex, more layered, more difficult to articulate. The phantom lover carries this gaze because you gave it to them, because you know, somewhere below the level of conscious thought, exactly what kind of looking would make you feel most fully met. Here is where the ache transforms into something useful, something that can be carried forward into the waking world without becoming a burden. If you know this clearly what kind of scene you need, then you carry within you a kind of compass, not one that points toward a specific person, because the phantom was never about a specific person, but one that points toward a quality of connection, a depth of mutual presence that you can cultivate in any relationship, romantic or otherwise, that matters to you. The ache is a teacher, and its lesson is not that you are lacking something essential, but that you know, with remarkable precision, what essential connection feels like. Let the phantom figure begin to fade now, not vanishing abruptly but receding the way a friend recedes when they walk down a long road away from you, growing smaller gradually, their outline blurring into the landscape until you cannot tell where they end and the horizon begins. They are not gone. They will return in other quiet hours, in other pockets of stillness, bearing the same gentle message. But for now, let them go, and as they go, notice that what remains is not emptiness, but a kind of fullness, the fullness of having felt something real even in the absence of a real person to feel it with. Your body is heavier now, sinking into the mattress the way a stone sinks into sand, slowly and with a kind of inevitability that requires no effort. The muscles of your face have softened. Your eyelids, if they were not already closed, would be too heavy to hold open. Even your thoughts are growing less distinct, their edges blurring the way the phantom's outline blurred, dissolving into the warm dark of the approaching sleep. There is a tenderness in this dissolution, a kindness in the way the mind releases its grip on the day's concerns and allows itself to drift. You have spent so much of your waking life holding things together, maintaining the structure of your days, keeping the various parts of yourself organized and functional and presentable to the world. Here, in the dark, none of that is necessary. You can be unstructured, formless even. Here, it is enough to be nothing more than a warm body breathing in a dark room, and that is enough, more than enough, because the simple fact of your breathing is evidence of a life that is being lived, a story that is still being told, even in the silences between sentences. The phantom relationship has given you something tonight, not the ache alone, but the understanding that lives beneath the ache, quiet as bedrock, steady as the pulse in your wrist. You know what love looks like to you and what being truly seen would feel like. That knowledge does not belong only to imagined futures or phantom companions. It belongs to you, here and now, in the life you are actually living, and it is waiting to be expressed in whatever form tomorrow offers. Rest now, gently. Let the imagining settle like dust after a caravan has passed, slowly and gently, each particle finding its place on the ground of your being. Sleep is not far. It gathers around you like fog around a harbor, soft and encompassing and full of the promise that when it lifts, the world will still be there, solid and surprising and ready to be met with whatever courage and tenderness you can bring. Deep inside the architecture of your memory, there is a room where a different version of you sits quietly, looking out through a window that opens onto a landscape you will never walk through. This version of you made a single different choice at a single pivotal moment, and that one divergence was enough to send the entire arc of a life spinning off in a direction so different from yours that the two of you, meeting today, might barely recognize each other. They said yes when you said no, or they said no when you said yes. One syllable, one breath, one tiny shift in the balance of courage and caution, and everything after was changed. You remember the moment, though you may have taught yourself not to dwell on it. There was a question asked, or an opportunity offered, or a threshold that appeared in the ordinary flow of your days, and you hesitated. Something inside you leaned toward one answer while something else, equally strong, equally sincere, pulled toward another. For a moment that felt like forever, the two impulses held you suspended between them, like a compass needle trembling between two magnetic poles, unable to settle. Then the needle swung, and you went one way, and the other way closed behind you the way a book closes when you turn past the last page of a chapter, softly but with a kind of finality that only becomes clear much later. The self who went the other way did not cease to exist when you made your choice. They continued on, in the only way that imagined things continue, inside the part of your mind that never stops constructing alternatives. This self is vivid to you in certain moods, especially in the late hours, especially when the distance between what is and what might have been feels most acute. You can almost see them, going about a daily life that rhymes with yours but does not match it, waking in a different room, walking down a different street, carrying in their chest a different set of joys and a different configuration of regrets. It is tempting to imagine that this other self is happier than you are. The mind has a bias toward the road not taken, painting it in warmer colors, smoothing out the difficulties that would surely have attended it, presenting it as a coherent narrative of fulfillment when in reality it would have been just as messy, just as unpredictable, just as full of moments that did not go according to plan. This is not a flaw in your thinking. It is the way all minds work, romanticizing distance, softening the edges of the unfamiliar until it gleams with an appeal that the familiar can never quite match, because the familiar carries the weight of all its imperfections, visible and accounted for, while the unfamiliar carries only the lightness of possibility. Still, knowing this does not always take the ache away. Knowing that the other path would have had its own thorns does not prevent the imagination from lingering on its flowers. So rather than arguing with the feeling, rather than trying to convince yourself through logic that you made the right choice, let us sit with the feeling itself, honoring it for what it is without needing it to be anything else. Feel your body lying still, heavy with the gravity of sleep that has not yet arrived but is approaching, the way weather approaches, visible on the horizon before it arrives overhead. Your legs are heavy. Your arms rest at your sides or across your body with a weight that seems borrowed from the earth itself. Each breath is slower than the last, not because you are trying to slow them, but because the body knows what it is doing, drawing you down toward rest the way roots draw a tree down into soil, not as a constraint but as a form of nourishment. The self who said yes when you said no is not your enemy. They are not a reproach or a rebuke. They are more like a sibling you have never met, someone who shares your blood and your bone structure and the basic architecture of your heart, but who has lived a life shaped by a single different wind. If you could sit across from this self at a table, in a quiet room, with nothing to prove and nothing to defend, what you would find is not envy or resentment, but a deep and startling compassion, the kind that comes from recognizing your own face in someone else's story. Because here is what the night wants you to understand, and what sleep in its generous way will help you hold. Every choice you have ever made was made by the whole of you, not just the rational part, not just the fearful part, not just the bold or the cautious or the tender part, but all of these working together in a collaboration so complex that calling the result a single decision is almost laughably reductive. You did not say no because you were weak, and you did not say yes because you were strong, or vice versa. You said what you said because you were all of your parts at once, in that particular moment, with that particular moment, with that particular information, under that particular sky. The choice was not perfect because you are not perfect, and the imperfection is not a failure but a feature of being alive and human, of being the kind of creature that must choose without knowing what the choice will bring. The other self, the one who chose differently, would have been equally imperfect. Their yes would have carried its own consequences, some beautiful and some difficult, some visible immediately and some not surfacing for years. They would lie awake some nights too, wondering about the self who said no, imagining that person's life with the same wistful longing that you bring to imagining theirs. This is the nature of consciousness, always reaching for what it does not hold, forever constructing the road not taken alongside the one beneath its feet. What if you could release the need to compare, not permanently, because the mind will always compare, but just for tonight, just for the duration of this slow descent into sleep? What if you could set down the measuring stick that places one life against another and instead simply acknowledge that both lives, the one you are living and the one you are imagining, are expressions of the same vast potential that makes you the person you are? Neither is more real than the other in this moment, because you are not living either of them right now. Right now, you are simply here, breathing, resting, held by the dark. The self who said yes fades into the background of your awareness, not because they are unimportant, but because the night has other rooms to show you, other corners of this tender territory to explore. Before they go, notice what they leave behind. Not guilt, not regret, but a subtle expansion of your understanding of yourself, a recognition that you contain multitudes, that the person lying here in this bed is not a single fixed entity, but a vast and fluid field of possibility that has temporarily taken this particular shape, in this particular body, at this particular point in time. Tomorrow, you will make more choices. Some will feel momentous. Others will seem so small that you will not even register them as choices at all, though they will be, each one a branching point, each one creating new selves who will walk new roads through new versions of the world. This is not a burden. It is the fundamental texture of being alive, the way a river's fundamental texture is movement, always forward, always branching, always finding new channels through the landscape it encounters. For now, though, there are no choices to make. The only thing required of you is to be here and breathe, letting the weight of the day drain out of your muscles and into the mattress, sinking through the floor and foundation until the patient earth absorbs it all, endlessly patient, endlessly willing to absorb whatever you need to release. The self who said yes is resting too, somewhere in the vast interior of your imagination, and perhaps in some way that logic cannot explain. They are grateful for you, just as you are occasionally grateful for the choices that brought you to this specific room, this specific bed, this specific softening into the arms of a night that asks nothing of you but your willingness to surrender. Let the surrender come, slowly and without force, like petals opening in the warmth of a sun that shines from no particular direction. You are safe. The choices have been made and they have brought you here, and here is exactly where you need to be. There is a particular season that your phantom selves inhabit most vividly, and for many people, that season is summer. Not the summer that actually happened, with its mundane errands and its sticky afternoons and the particular brand of restlessness that comes from having nowhere in particular to be, but an imagined summer, a composite of all the warmth and freedom and golden light that the word itself seems to promise. This phantom summer stretches out behind your closed eyes now, vast as a wheat field, shimmering with heat that you can almost feel on your skin even as the cool air of your bedroom passes over you. In this summer, you are somewhere else. Not necessarily a place you can name, though it may have features borrowed from places you have actually been or places you have seen in photographs that lodged in your memory with unusual persistence. There's water nearby, a lake or a coast or a slow river bending through a valley thick with green. The air smells of warm earth and something floral, not the sharp sweetness of a garden, but the wilder, more complex scent of things growing without anyone's permission, meadow grass and wildflowers and the faint mineral tang of water moving over stone. You are younger in this summer, or perhaps not younger in years, but younger in the way you carry yourself, lighter, less burdened by the accumulated weight of things learned and losses absorbed. Your shoulders sit differently. Your walk has a looseness to it that suggests you have nowhere urgent to be, and no one waiting to evaluate how you spend your time. There is a book near you, open and face down on warm wood, its pages riffling slightly in a breeze that comes from no particular direction. You were reading it a moment ago but stopped, not because you lost interest but because the day itself was more interesting, with light playing across the water and a bird's call that seemed to hang in the air like a note sustained on a violin. This summer belongs to one of your phantom selves, one of the versions of you that diverged at some point in the past and follow the current of a different life to this different shore. In their timeline, the choices that led here seemed natural, even inevitable, one thing flowing into the next the way one summer day flows into the evening that follows it, without resistance, without the friction of doubt. They did not necessarily make better choices than you made. They simply made different ones, and those differences accumulated over time the way snowflakes accumulate into drifts, each one insignificant on its own, but together forming a landscape that looks nothing like the one next to it. Let yourself linger here in this warmth that exists nowhere but in your imagination, and notice how the body responds. Notice how even an imagined summer has the power to soften the muscles and slow the breath, easing the low hum of tension that lives in the background of your nervous system like static on a radio that has been playing so long you have forgotten it is there. The body does not always distinguish between the real and the imagined, which is why a frightening thought can make the heart race and a memory of tenderness can bring tears to eyes that have no immediate reason to cry. Right now, the warmth of this phantom summer is doing something gentle to the tissue of your being, loosening the places where stress has knotted itself into your flesh, releasing the held breath of a body that has been bracing against something for longer than it can remember. This is one of the quieter gifts of the unlived life. It offers the mind a place to rest that is free from the specific pressures of the life being lived. In your actual summer, there were deadlines and expectations, conversations that went sideways, plans that dissolved in the face of circumstances beyond your control. But in this imagined season, none of that exists. There is only water and warmth, the feeling of time stretching in all directions, unhurried, unpressured, ungoverned by any clock or calendar. You might wonder whether there is something escapist in this kind of imagining, something that pulls you away from the life you are living rather than drawing you deeper into it. It is a fair question, and the answer is more subtle than a simple yes or no. Escape, in small and conscious doses, is not the enemy of presence. It is, in fact, one of the ways the mind regulates itself, dipping into the cool water of fantasy when the heat of reality becomes too much, then returning refreshed, able to engage with what is actual from a place of greater calm and greater perspective. The danger lies only in staying too long, in building the imagined life so thoroughly that the real one begins to feel like a prison by comparison. But you are not doing that tonight. You are visiting, not moving in. You are taking a brief swim in the waters of what might have been and then climbing back onto the shore of what is, shaking off the droplets, carrying with you only the refreshment. Notice how the light is changing in this phantom summer. Notice how the sun has moved lower in the sky, shifting the quality of light from bright midday white to something warmer, more golden, more generous to the surfaces it touches. Water that earlier sparkled with 1,000 points of silver now holds deeper colors, amber and bronze, with shadows pooling in the places where the bank overhangs the current. The air is cooling slightly, carrying with it the first hint of the evening that is coming. And there is something unbearably lovely about this particular moment, the hinge between day and night, when everything is suffused with a beauty so transient that even looking at it feels like an act of farewell. This is the moment your phantom self knows best, not the broad daylight of achievement or the darkness of difficulty, but this in-between time, when the world seems to pause and hold its breath and offer itself up to anyone willing to pay attention. Your phantom self is good at paying attention, because in this imagined life, there is room for it, space cleared of the clutter that fills your actual hours, time set aside specifically for the act of noticing. Perhaps this is the real object of your longing, not a different geography or a different set of circumstances, but simply more room to notice, more time to look, more permission to let beauty land on you the way pollen lands on the surface of still water, without resistance, without hurry. Carry this permission with you, continuing to sink towards sleep. You do not need to live in a phantom summer to give yourself the gift of attention. You do not need to be someone else, somewhere else, in some other version of the world. The quality of noticing that your phantom self embodies is available to you in any season, in any place, at any hour. It requires only the willingness to slow down and look a little longer, letting the ordinary reveal the extraordinary that is always hiding inside it like a seed inside a fruit. Already the summer is fading, not into autumn, but into the gentle nowhere of a dream releasing its hold. Water dims while warmth recedes. A book lies closed on its warm wooden surface, and the bird that was singing has gone quiet, and the breeze that riffled its pages has stilled. What remains is the feeling, the deep body memory of having been somewhere warm and safe and spacious, even if that somewhere existed only in the tender country of your imagination. Your breathing is very slow now, deep and rhythmic, like waves on a shore that has never known a storm. Each inhale brings in the quietness of the night around you. Each exhale releases something you no longer need to carry. The unlived summers are settling into the background of your awareness, taking their place among the many phantom seasons that your mind has collected over the years, each one a testament to your capacity for beauty, each one evidence that you are a creature who can build entire worlds from nothing more than longing and light. Rest in that evidence. Let it hold you the way the warm earth of that imagined shore held the weight of a body that was almost yours, gently, firmly, without any need for you to do anything at all. Before you were who you are, there was another version of you that your parents intended to create. Not consciously perhaps, and certainly not with the precision of an architect following a blueprint, but with the quieter intentionality of people who had their own dreams about what a child of theirs would become. They carried these dreams the way all parents carry them, folded into the fabric of daily life, expressed not in grand declarations but in the small choices that accumulate over years, which books to read aloud, which activities to encourage, which behaviors to praise, and which to gently redirect. In the gap between the person they imagined and the person you actually became, there lives one of your most intimate phantom selves. This phantom is different from the others you have visited tonight, because it was not born from your own choices. It was born from someone else's imagination, shaped by someone else's hopes, colored by someone else's understanding of what a good life looks like. Your parents, whoever they were, whatever their strengths and limitations, held in their minds an image of who you might become, and that image was assembled from the raw materials of their own experience and regrets, of unlived lives they carried. In a sense, you were asked to carry not only your own phantom selves but theirs as well, to be the vessel for dreams that predated your ability to dream for yourself. This is not said in bitterness or blame. Parents do what parents have always done, which is to project onto the blankness of a new life all the color and form of their own yearning. It is a kind of love, this projection, even when it is clumsy, even when it weighs more than a child should be asked to bear. The parent who wanted you to be a doctor carried that wish not out of indifference to your own desires, but out of a deep and often inarticulate fear that the world would be harsh to you, that a certain kind of credential would serve as armor against the difficulties they themselves had faced without it. The parent who wanted you to be bolder, more outgoing, more comfortable in the spotlight was offering you, in their own way, the life they wished they had given themselves permission to live. Tonight, in the safety of this darkness, you can hold both things at once. You can acknowledge that the weight of your parents' expectations was sometimes heavier than it needed to be, and you can also recognize that the weight came from a place of love, however imperfectly expressed. These two truths do not cancel each other out. They coexist, the way the roots of a tree coexist with the rock they have grown around, each one shaping the other, each one part of the same landscape. The person your parents almost raised, the phantom self who fulfilled their particular vision, is worth visiting for a moment. not to judge them or to mourn them, but to understand the ways in which you are similar to this phantom and the ways in which you are profoundly, beautifully different. Imagine this other self standing in a room, dressed in the life your parents imagined for you, carrying the career they envisioned, inhabiting the posture and the confidence they wished for. Look at this self with curiosity rather than longing, the way you would look at a portrait in a museum, appreciating the skill of the artist while recognizing that the subject is not you. Notice what this phantom self is wearing, metaphorically speaking. Notice the shape of their days and the texture of their concerns, the particular quality of satisfaction or restlessness that lives in their chest. Some of what you see may be appealing. There may be elements of this imagined life that resonate with parts of you that genuinely wanted what your parents wanted, parts that found real pleasure in the directions they encouraged. These are not contaminated simply because someone else pointed you toward them. Desire does not become less authentic simply because it was sparked by another person's vision. Some of the best things in your life may have begun as someone else's dream for you, and that is not a reason to disown them, but a reason to hold them with a double tenderness, grateful both for the gift and for the giver. But notice, too, the places where this phantom self diverges from who you actually are. Notice the areas of strain, the corners where the imagined life fits like a coat made for someone with slightly different proportions, tight across the shoulders, loose at the waist, wearable but never quite comfortable. These are the places where you asserted your own becoming, where the person you actually are pushed back against the person you actually are pushed back against the person someone else needed you to be. This pushing back was not rebellion, though it may have felt that way at the time to you and to them. It was individuation, the essential and often painful process by which a self distinguishes itself from the expectations that surround it, not by rejecting everything it has been given, but by sorting through it carefully, keeping what fits, setting aside what does not, and finding the courage to claim the shape that was always waiting beneath the layers of someone else's hoping. Let yourself feel the tenderness that rises when you think about this. Your parents were doing the best they could with the tools they had, which were the tools their own parents gave them, and those tools were similarly imperfect, similarly shaped by love and limitation in equal measure. The chain of phantom selves stretches back further than you can see, each generation carrying the unlived lives of the one before it, each one trying to give to its children the things it could not give to itself. You are part of this chain, and one day, if you have not already, you may find yourself doing the same thing, projecting onto someone younger and more malleable the image of a life you wish to have lived. Not because you are unkind, but because the longing is that deep, and that human, and that difficult to contain. Your body is very still now, and the darkness around you is thick and warm. Somewhere outside your window, the world continues its slow rotation, carrying you through the night toward a dawn that is still hours away. In the quiet, you can almost hear the hum of all these phantom selves, yours and your parents and their parents, a chorus of what might have been, singing in a register too low for the waking ear to catch, but audible in moments like this, when everything else has gone quiet. Do not be frightened by this chorus. It is not a haunting. It is a heritage, the emotional inheritance that comes with being born into a family, into a species, into a world where consciousness is always outpacing the containers built to hold it. Every one of those phantom selves was loved into existence by someone who wanted the best for someone else, and every one of them eventually gave way to the actual self that emerged, imperfect and surprising and utterly unlike anything that could have been predicted from the outside. You are that actual self. You are the one who emerged, who pushed through the layers of expectation and hope and fear and good intention, who stood up in your own skin and said, in whatever way you found to say it, "This is who I am." That statement is still being made. It is being made right now in the simple act of lying here and breathing and allowing yourself to be exactly who you are, without apology or performance, free from the need to match any image that was ever held up before you as a model. Rest in this. Let the phantom of your parents' dreaming settle into its place among the others, a companion rather than a competitor, part of the rich tapestry of selves that makes up the territory of your interior life. It has something to teach you about where you came from and about the love that shaped you even when it did not understand you. Hold that lesson gently, the way you would hold a letter written in a language you are only beginning to learn, knowing that the meaning will unfold over time, slowly, in its own way, on its own schedule. Sleep continues to approach, patient as always, carrying with it the mercy of forgetting that allows the mind to reset and begin again tomorrow with fresh eyes and a lighter heart. Let it come, this sleep. Let it wash over the whole complicated inheritance of who you are and who you were meant to be, smoothing the rough edges, softening the places where the two versions rub against each other, until what remains is simply you, resting, breathing, held. Not every turning point announces itself. Some arrive with all the gravity and ceremony of a door slamming, an unmistakable sound of something final that becomes the kind of moment you can point to afterward and say, "There, that is where everything changed." But others come so quietly that you do not recognize them for what they are until years later, when you look back from a great distance and realize that the landscape shifted beneath your feet without you feeling the tremor. It is these quiet turnings that haunt us most, because they deny us even the consolation of knowing that we were present for our own transformation. There was a door like this in your life, one that closed so softly you barely heard it. Perhaps it was the last time you spoke to someone who would later drift away, not through conflict or drama, but through the slow erosion of proximity, the way two boats tied to the same dock will, once untethered, drift in different directions so gradually that neither one notices the widening gap until it has become an ocean. Perhaps it was the final afternoon you spent in a place that had been yours for years. A home you would leave and a town you would outgrow, where the light fell in a way that felt like belonging, and you did not know it was the last time, so you did not pause to memorize it the way you would have if you had understood. Or perhaps the door was not a place or a person, but a state of being. Perhaps there was a time in your life when a certain kind of openness was natural to you, a willingness to be surprised that carried with it a capacity for delight that did not require special circumstances, but could find its material in the ordinary texture of any given day. You did not decide to close this door. Nobody slammed it shut. It simply narrowed over time, the way a path narrows when it is not walked often enough, vegetation creeping in from the sides, until one day you realized that what had once been a wide and easy passage was now barely a track, and you could no longer remember when the narrowing had begun. Tonight, let us sit with the particular grief of the unwitnessed ending. This is perhaps the most tender territory we will visit, because it involves not only the loss of what was but the additional loss of not having been present for the losing. There is a part of the mind that craves narrative coherence, that wants every significant moment to come with a soundtrack in a frame, a clear beginning and a definite conclusion. When the endings are quiet, when they happen without our noticing, this part of the mind feels cheated, and the grief it produces is not the clean grief of a clearly defined loss, but something murkier, more diffuse, a sadness that does not know exactly what it is sad about. Feel your body in the darkness. Feel the way the mattress supports you, firm and steady, as dependable as the ground. Notice the places where your body contacts the surface beneath it, your head against the pillow, the curve of spine pressing down, heels resting heavy, alongside the places where it does not, the small hollows where air circulates between your skin and the sheet, warm pockets of space that are uniquely yours. You are present here, fully and completely, and that presence is itself a kind of answer to the grief of the unwitnessed ending. Right now, in this moment, you are witnessing. Attention flows from you naturally, without effort. Whatever doors may be closing or opening in the broad sweep of your life, in this particular moment, you are here for it. Consider what it means to grieve something you were not even aware of losing. It means that some part of you was paying closer attention than the rest, that beneath the surface busyness of your conscious mind, a deeper layer was keeping watch, noting the shifts, registering the closings, cataloging the last times even as your waking self walked obliviously past them. This deeper layer is not morbid or pessimistic. It is simply honest, and its honesty is a form of love, a refusal to let the significant pass unnoticed even when the conscious mind is too distracted to attend to it. The phantom self who still lives on the other side of the quietly closed door is, in some ways, the most poignant of all the selves you carry. This is because they did not diverge from you through any grand act of choice or courage or compromise. This phantom self simply stayed in a place or a time or a state of being that you, without meaning to, left behind. Still in the room where the light fell just so, still dwelling in the friendship that once felt effortless. Something in them remains standing in the wide, easy openness that you have since narrowed away from, and they look at you across the gap of years with an expression that is not accusation, but something gentler, something that looks like patience, like the willingness to wait until you are ready to notice what was lost. Perhaps you are ready now. Perhaps the quiet of this night and the slowness of your breathing, the heaviness of your limbs and the softness of the dark around you have created enough stillness for the noticing to happen. If so, let it happen gently. Do not grab at the feeling or try to analyze it into submission. Let it rise the way a bubble rises through still water, slowly and without urgency, arriving at the surface in its own time. What you may find, when the feeling surfaces, is not the sharp sting of regret but something more diffuse and more survivable. It is a kind of wistfulness, an awareness that the passage of time is not a straight line but a one-way current, always carrying you forward, always leaving things behind, and that the things left behind do not cease to matter simply because you can no longer reach them. Friendships that faded, places that were outgrown, an openness that slowly narrowed, all of these still exist in the sediment of your being, settled at the bottom of the deep well of your experience, contributing to the richness of the water that is drawn from it every day. You are not poorer for these quiet losses. You are, in fact, richer, because you are someone who noticed them, even if the noticing came late. Many people walk past their own turning points without ever looking back, and there is a kind of freedom in that, a lightness that comes from not carrying the weight of awareness. But there is also a depth that belongs only to those who do look back, who do feel the ache of the unwitnessed ending, who do carry the phantom selves that live beyond the quietly closed doors. This depth is yours, and it is not a burden unless you make it one. Let the depth be a resting place instead. Imagine it as a pool of warm water in which you can float, supported by all the accumulated experience of your life, witnessed moments alongside unwitnessed ones, endings you saw coming alongside the ones that surprised you years after the fact. Floating here, you are held by everything you have ever been, everything you have ever blawed, without knowing you were loving it until it was gone. The water is warm because grief, when it is held gently enough, generates its own heat, and that heat is not destructive but nourishing, the warmth of a body processing what it has been through and transforming it into something that can be used. Your eyelids are heavy. Your thoughts are becoming softer, losing their hard edges the way ice loses its edges in warm water, dissolving from sharp angles into smooth curves and then into formlessness. The door that closed quietly is part of you now, not as a wound but as a doorway to a deeper understanding of what it means to be alive in a world where nothing stays the same, where every moment is simultaneously an arrival and a departure, and where the only constant is the consciousness that moves through it all, witnessing what it can, grieving what it must, loving what it panned, grieving what it must, loving what it finds. Sleep is very close now. It stands at the edge of your awareness like someone waiting to be invited in, patient and warm in carrying with it the gift of temporary forgetting and the mercy of a few hours during which phantom selves will be quiet, where doors will not matter, and the only thing that exists will be the deep, slow rhythm of a body at rest. Invited in now, the sleep. Open whatever door still remains open and let it enter, soft-footed and kind, bringing with it the peace that comes not from resolution but from acceptance, the peace of someone who has looked at their losses honestly and found that they are survivable, that they are even, in their own quiet way, beautiful. There is a belief that lives so deep in the human heart that most people never examine it directly. It is the belief that somewhere, in some other configuration of choices and circumstances, there exists a version of you that is genuinely, thoroughly, uncomplicated happy. Not happy in the way you sometimes are, which is to say intermittently, imperfectly, mixed always with the awareness that happiness is temporary and that difficulty is never far behind, but happy in a way that is stable, self-sustaining, a default state rather than a fleeting visitor. This belief is extraordinarily powerful. It shapes the way you evaluate your own life, measuring it always against this phantom standard, finding it always slightly wanting. It fuels the late-night ache for other lives, other selves, because if happiness in its purest form is achievable, then surely it must live somewhere in one of those roads not taken, one of those doors not opened, one of those versions of yourself that made the choices you did not make. The phantom happy self is the most seductive of all your unlived selves because it promises not just a different life but a fundamentally different experience of being alive. Tonight, as you rest in the darkness, with your body growing heavier and your thoughts growing softer, let us hold this belief up to the gentle light of examination and see what it is actually made of. Not to destroy it, because beliefs this deep cannot be destroyed by argument alone, but to loosen its grip on you, the way a warm bath loosens the grip of cold on a chilled body, gradually, without force, through the application of something more comfortable than what was there before. Begin by noticing what you imagine when you picture this happy self. Notice the specific quality of their contentment. In your imagination, this other version of you does not worry the way you worry. Sleep comes easily to them, and mornings begin with a kind of easy gladness rather than the low-level dread that sometimes greets you before the first cup of coffee. Relationships run smooth in this imagined life. Work carries meaning, and the body feels good to live in. Everything that grinds and chafes in your actual life has been smoothed away in theirs, leaving only the polished surface of satisfaction. Now notice something else, something your imagination may not want you to see. This happy self has no depth. Look closely at the picture in your mind and you will find that it is flat, like a photograph, vivid in its colors but with no dimension behind the surface. Without struggle, there is no dimension behind the surface. Without struggle, there is no growth. Failure, too, is absent, which means learning has no soil to grow in. Absent the ache, there is no creation, because creation in its truest form always begins with an ache, a sense that something is missing that needs to be brought into being. But the person lying here tonight, the one with complicated emotions, imperfect sleep, and the low-grade hum of anxiety that never fully goes away, this person has something the phantom happy self will never possess. This person has been tempered by difficulty, shaped by loss, deepened by the very suffering that makes happiness seem so elusive. The Japanese have a practice of repairing broken pottery with gold, understanding that the cracks are not flaws to be hidden, but histories to be honored, evidence that the vessel has lived, has been used, has been broken and put back together with something precious. Your cracks are like this. They are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of a life fully lived, of a being that has been broken open by experience and filled with something luminous. This is not to romanticize suffering or to suggest that pain is somehow good for you. Pain is pain, and there is no moral credit in enduring it. What is being suggested, gently, in the warm safety of this night, is that the version of yourself who is not suffered is not the version you would actually want to be, because that version is hollow, a shell shaped like happiness but empty of the substance that gives happiness its meaning. The moments of genuine contentment you have experienced in your actual life, those rare and precious intervals when everything seemed to align and you felt, briefly, that the world was exactly as it should be, those moments had their power precisely because they emerged against the backdrop of difficulty. They were not the default. They were earned, the way the first warm day of spring is earned by months of cold, and their earned quality is what made them worth remembering. Let your breathing continue its slow descent toward the rhythm of sleep. Notice how the body, when it is not being asked to perform or produce or prove anything, settles into a state that is neither happy nor unhappy, but something more fundamental, a state of simple being, existing without evaluation, occupying space and drawing breath and releasing it without needing to assign a quality rating to the experience. This is closer to what the phantom happy self was actually pointing toward than any specific set of circumstances or achievements. It was pointing toward a way of being that is at peace with itself, not because everything is perfect, but because the need for everything to be perfect has been gently, gradually released. Consider the possibility that what you have been calling happiness all along is not a state to be achieved, but a byproduct of something else entirely: engagement and connection, the willingness to show up fully for whatever life presents, pleasant or painful, expected or surprising. If this is the case, then you are not failing to be happy. You are doing the thing that happiness comes from each time you let yourself feel something real, each time you stay present with a difficult emotion rather than numbing it. It happens when you extend kindness to someone else or to yourself without calculating the return. The happy self you have been mourning is not someone you could become through better choices. It is someone you already are, in fragmented moments, scattered throughout your actual days, visible when you stop looking for happiness as a constant state and begin noticing it as a recurring visitor. The night outside your window is the same night it has been all along, neither better nor worse than you imagined it would be when you lay down, simply present, simply there, filling the space around your home with its own quality of darkness, its own particular brand of silence. In this night, the phantom happy self dissolves, not because you have defeated it, but because you have seen through it, the way you see through a mirage when you get close enough. It was never real. What was real was the longing that created it, and the longing was real because it grew from your capacity for hope, which is one of the most beautiful things about you. Carry that capacity into sleep, not as a weapon to wield against tomorrow's difficulties, but as a companion to walk beside you through whatever comes. Hope does not require the existence of a perfect version of yourself somewhere in the multiverse. It requires only the belief that tomorrow can hold something worth being present for, and that you are capable of recognizing it when it arrives. Your body is very heavy now. The thoughts that have been moving through your mind are slowing, losing their coherence the way a stream loses its force when it enters a wide, shallow lake, spreading out, becoming still, merging with the larger body of rest that awaits you. The phantom happy self has taken its place among all the other phantoms, not banished but understood, not mourned but gently acknowledged, one more projection of a mind that loves you enough to keep constructing better worlds, even when the world you are living in is already, in its imperfect way, more than enough. Sleep is here now, not approaching but arrived, standing at the edge of your consciousness with its hands open and its face kind. It does not judge the life you have lived or the life you have imagined. It does not compare you to anyone, real or phantom. It simply offers you what it has always offered, a few hours of dissolution and formlessness, a return to the deep well from which you emerged this morning and to which you return each night, changed and unchanged, broken and whole, perfectly, gloriously, stubbornly alive. Somewhere beneath the surface of who you present yourself to be, there is a garden that nobody tends. It is not a garden you planted deliberately. It planted itself, seed by seed, over the course of your life, each seed a thing you did not allow yourself to become, a quality you suppressed, an impulse you redirected, a piece of your nature that did not fit the shape you were trying to hold. This garden grows in darkness, which is fitting because the things that grow there are the parts of you that were asked to stay out of the light. Every person carries such a garden. It is one of the fundamental features of being a self in the world, that not everything you contain can be expressed, that the process of becoming someone in particular requires you to set aside the many other someones you might have been. A child who was told to be quiet carries, in the soil of this hidden garden, a wildflower of loudness that was never allowed to bloom. The young person praised for being practical tends, unknowingly, a climbing vine of impracticality and dreaminess, the wish to do something beautiful and useless simply because beauty does not need to justify itself. The adult who has built a life on responsibility and competence carries, deeper than any of these, a small and persistent shrub of irresponsibility, of the wish to abandon the plan and wander without a map, to see what happens when control is released. These are not shameful things. They are not evidence of some flaw or deficiency in your character. They are the natural byproduct of the impossible task of being a whole person in a world that rewards only certain kinds of wholeness. The qualities that grow in your shadow garden are not your weaknesses. They are your unused strengths, the parts of your potential that were not rejected because they were bad, but because there is simply not enough room for them in the life you are building, or because someone whose opinion mattered to you made it clear, subtly or otherwise, that these qualities were not welcome. Tonight, as the darkness around you grows deeper and your body sinks further toward the kind of stillness that precedes sleep, let us visit this garden. Not to uproot anything or to force anything into bloom, but simply to walk among the rows and see what has been growing without your conscious attention. The darkness is a good companion for this kind of visit because the things in the shadow garden are most comfortable in the dark. Having spent their lives there, these growing things know its textures and its temperatures. Light is not what they require, only your presence, your willingness to acknowledge that they exist. Feel the ground beneath your imagined feet as you walk among these growing things. It is soft, the soil of the unconscious, rich with decomposed experience, with the mulch of forgotten moments and composted feelings. Something grows to your left that you recognize instantly, though you may not have a name for it. It is the impulse toward a kind of expression you have never fully allowed yourself, a creative urge, an emotional honesty, a physical freedom that the structured world of your daily life does not accommodate. It is green and vigorous, this growing thing, fed by all the energy you have spent suppressing it, because what is pushed down does not disappear. It only grows in a different direction, the way tree roots grow when they encounter rock, finding their way around the obstacle, persistent and patient and surprisingly strong. To your right, there is something smaller but equally alive, a quality of tenderness or vulnerability that you learned early in life to protect with armor. Perhaps you were taught that certain emotions were unsafe, that showing them would make you a target or a burden. So you grew a shell around this tender place, and the tenderness retreated into the shadow garden, where it has been growing quietly all this time, waiting for a moment when the shell might crack just enough to let a little light in. Tonight could be that moment, if you let it. The dark is paradoxically the safest place for light to enter, because in the dark, there is no one watching or evaluating, no audience before whom you must perform strength or composure. There is only you and the garden and the quiet things that grow in the soil of your deepest self. Here is something important to understand about this hidden garden. The things that grow here are not your enemies. They are not opposed to the life you have built or the person you have worked so hard to become. They are the complement to that person, a counterbalance that forms the other side of the coin that is you. A life lived entirely in the light, with every quality on display and every impulse expressed, would be as unlivable as a life lived entirely in shadow. What matters is the relationship between the two, the dialogue between what is shown and what is hidden, between the face you present to the world and the face that looks back at you from the mirror in the dark. You can begin this dialogue tonight simply by listening, not with your ears but with the quieter organ of attention that lives somewhere in the center of your being, the part that knows things without being told, that feels the weather of your interior life the way the body feels the weather of your interior life, the way the body feels the weather of the exterior one. Listen to what the garden is telling you. It may not speak in words. It may speak in feelings and images, and the slow pulse of recognition that comes when you encounter a truth you already knew but had not yet admitted to yourself. Perhaps what you hear is this: you are more than the person the world sees. You are more than your role, your title, the carefully curated version of yourself that navigates meetings and conversations and social obligations with practiced ease. Beneath all of that, in the rich dark of the garden, there is a wilder self, an older self, a self that existed before you learned the rules of acceptable personhood, and this self is not primitive or dangerous, but simply more complete. It includes the parts you have pruned away, the branches you have cut to keep the tree a manageable shape, and it is offering them back to you now, not as an obligation, but as an invitation. You do not have to accept the invitation tonight. The garden is patient. It has been growing for years without your conscious participation, and it will continue to grow whether you visit it or not. But knowing it is there, knowing that beneath the polished surface of your daily self there exists a richer, more textured, more complete version of who you are, this knowledge can be a comfort rather than a threat. It means that you are never truly depleted, because there are always reserves you have not yet drawn upon. It means that the feeling of something missing in your life may not be about external circumstances at all, but about an internal reunion that has not yet taken place. Let the garden fade now, returning to the background of your awareness where it has always lived. It will be there in the morning, the same as it has always been, patient and green and persistently alive. What you carry with you from this visit is not a task or a resolution, but a tenderness, a softening of the boundary between the self you show and the self you hide. It is the recognition that both of them are you and that both of them are worthy of the life you are living. Your breathing is deep now, slow as a tide, and the body has given up its last resistance to the gravitational pull of rest. The muscles of your face are smooth. Your hands lie open. The thoughts that were moving through your mind have slowed to a crawl, each one passing through your awareness like a distant cloud, noticed but not held, observed but not analyzed. This is the fertile ground of sleep, the place where the shadow and the light meet and exchange their gifts without any help from you at all. Rest now in the knowledge that you are complete, not perfect, which is something different entirely, but complete, containing all the parts, expressed and unexpressed, visible and invisible, tended and wild. The garden grows while you sleep, and what it grows is you, the full, unedited, unrestricted version of you that has been waiting, all this time, for exactly this kind of darkness. There is a strange skill that nobody teaches and everyone must learn, which is how to grieve for something that never happened. The usual forms of grief, the ones that society recognizes and ritualizes, are built around loss, the death of someone loved, the ending of a relationship or departure from a home or a country or a phase of life. These losses are real and tangible, and the grief they produce has a clear object, something that was present and is now absent, something that left a specific shape of emptiness behind. But the grief of the unlived life has no such object. What you mourn is not something that was taken from you, but something that was never given, a possibility that glimmered and then passed into a future that existed only in the conditional tense. This kind of grief is harder to hold because it is harder to name. When you lose someone you love, you can say their name and the grief has a place to land. When you lose a possibility or a version of yourself, some life that might have been, the grief floats without an anchor, attaching itself to whatever happens to be nearby, coloring your mornings with a vague sadness you cannot quite explain, making your evenings feel slightly hollow even when they are full of the things that are supposed to bring comfort. This is the ache that wakes you at 3 in the morning, not with the sharp urgency of a nightmare, but with the softer, more persistent pressure of something unresolved, something that wants your attention but does not know how to ask for it directly. Tonight, in the deepening quiet, let us give this unnamed grief a moment of honest attention. Not to solve it, because it is not a problem to be solved, and not to explain it away, because explanation is not what it needs. What it needs is simply to be felt, the way a bruise needs to be touched sometimes, gently, to remind you that it is there and that it is healing. Feel your body in the bed, heavy and warm and still. Notice the places where tension has been holding, perhaps in the back of your neck or the muscles around your eyes or the subtle clenching of your stomach that you have learned to ignore during the day, but that becomes more noticeable now, in the absence of distractions. These are the places where unmourned grief lives in the body, expressed not in tears or words, but in the language of muscle and fascia and nerve, the physical residue of emotions that were felt but never fully processed. Let those places soften, not all at once but gradually, the way frost softens when the first warmth of morning touches it. There is no need to understand what each point of tension represents or trace it back to a specific unlived life. Simply give it permission to release, letting the held thing be unheld, trusting that the body knows what it is doing when it finally lets go of something it has been carrying. There is a deep wisdom in the act of mourning, even when what is mourned never existed in the tangible world. The mourning is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are dwelling on the past or that you have failed to move on. It is instead a form of completion, a way of closing a circle that was left open when the possibility was set aside. Every time you allow yourself to feel the ache of what might have been, you are performing a small act of integration, bringing the unlived life back into the fold of your actual experience, not as something that happened to you, but as something that matters to you, which is a different thing and equally important. Consider what happens to grief that is never acknowledged. It does not go away. It goes underground, seeping into the soil of your unconscious the way water seeps through limestone, invisible on the surface but slowly, persistently reshaping the landscape beneath. Unacknowledged grief becomes the vague dissatisfaction that colors an otherwise good life. It becomes the irritability that flares at small provocations. It becomes the numbness that settles over you in moments that should feel joyful, a thin layer of glass between you and the experience, transparent but impenetrable. These are not character flaws. They are symptoms of mourning that has not been given room to breathe. Tonight, you are giving it room. Simply by lying here, simply by letting these words wash over you while your body releases its held tension, you are creating space for a grief that has been waiting a long time to be felt. It will not overwhelm you. Grief that has been waiting this long has learned patience. It does not arrive as a wave, but as a tide, rising slowly, filling the spaces you make available to it, and then, just as slowly, receding, leaving the shore of your being smoother than it found it. Notice how the darkness around you feels different when you are holding space for grief. It feels thicker, more substantial, as though the night itself has taken on weight. This is not frightening. It is the weight of witness, the gravity that gathers when something true is being acknowledged. The darkness is holding you the way a pair of cupped hands holds water. Gently, with attention, aware that what is being held is precious and temporary and will eventually slip through the fingers no matter how carefully they are pressed together. Let yourself be held like this. Let the night witness your grief, named and unnamed alike. grief for people and grief for possibilities, sharp clear losses and blurry conditional ones. You do not need to sort them into categories or assign them degrees of legitimacy. Grief does not operate on a hierarchy. The ache for a life you never lived is as valid as the ache for a person you lost, because both are expressions of the same fundamental capacity, which is the capacity to care and attach, investing your heart in something and feeling the pull when that something is absent. This capacity is what makes you human in the fullest sense. It is what allows you to love, which means it is also what allows you to mourn, because love and mourning are not opposites but partners, two movements of the same deep current that flows through everything you feel. To mourn the unlived life is to honor the love you were prepared to give it. To feel the ache of the phantom self is to honor the investment of imagination and hope that went into constructing it. Neither the love nor the hope was wasted, even though neither found its intended recipient, because both of them shaped you, deepened you, made you more of whoever it is you are becoming. Your eyelids are heavy. Your thoughts have taken on the soft, unfocused quality that precedes sleep, each one dissolving almost as soon as it forms, like snowflakes landing on warm skin. The grief you have been holding is still present, but it has changed. It is no longer a pressure-seeking release. It has become something more like a warmth, the warmth that remains after something has been completed, the afterglow of an emotional process that needed to happen and has happened and can now rest. Let the warmth spread through you, from the center of your chest outward, into your arms and legs, into the tips of your fingers and the soles of your feet. It is the warmth of having felt something real and having survived the feeling. It is the warmth of your own aliveness, which includes both joy and sorrow, having and lacking, living alongside imagining, and which is larger, always larger, than any single experience it contains. Sleep comes now not as an escape from the morning but as its natural conclusion, the way sunset is the natural conclusion of the day, not an interruption but a completion. In sleep, the grief will continue its quiet work, sorting itself into memory, weaving itself into the fabric of who you are, and when you wake, you will be slightly different, slightly lighter, not because the unlived lives have disappeared, but because you have given them the acknowledgement they needed, and in doing so, you have set something free. There is a phrase from an old philosophical tradition that translates roughly as love of fate, and while we will not dwell on its origins, the feeling it describes is worth sitting with tonight. It is the feeling of turning toward the life you have actually lived, with all its detours and disappointments and unexpected graces, and finding not resignation but something warmer, something that resembles the way you might look at an old friend whose flaws you know intimately, but whose company you would not trade for anyone else's. This is not the same as saying that everything happens for a reason, which is a platitude that can feel hollow when applied to genuine suffering. The love of fate does not require you to believe that your pain was purposeful or that your losses were somehow necessary for your growth. It requires only that you stand in the middle of the life that is yours and say, without flinching, "This is what happened. This is where I am. This is the soil I have been given to grow in, and I will grow in it." The tenderness comes not from understanding the plan, because there may be no plan, but from the willingness to stop arguing with reality and instead to meet it with something approaching affection. Tonight, as your body rests and your breathing slows, consider what it would feel like to extend this tenderness to the life you have actually lived. Not the highlights, because those are easy to love. Not the highlights, because those are easy to love. Not the triumphs or those crystalline moments when everything fell into place with the satisfying click of a puzzle piece finding its home. Those do not need your tenderness. What needs it are the harder memories, the ones that make you wince, decisions you wish to undo, the years that seem, in retrospect, to have been spent in the wrong direction, relationships that cost more than they gave, and stretches of time that feel, when you look back on them, like nothing more than endurance. These are the parts of your life that the phantom selves were constructed to escape. Every unlived life you have imagined tonight was, at its root, an alternative to some piece of your actual experience that was difficult to bear. The city you never moved to was an alternative to the place where you felt stuck, and the calling you walked past stood in for the work that does not ignite you. Meanwhile, the relationship that lives only in imagination was an alternative to the loneliness or the compromise that characterizes your actual intimate life. Each phantom self was a flight from something real, and the thing it fled from is the thing that most needs your tenderness now. Picture your actual life laid out before you, not as a timeline but as a landscape. It stretches from the horizon of your earliest memories to the place where you stand now, and it is neither beautiful nor ugly, but both at once, the way all real landscapes are. There are sections of lush green where things grew easily and abundantly, and there are stretches of bare earth where nothing seemed to take root no matter how hard you tried. There are rivers running through it, some clear and some muddied, and there are places where the ground rises into hills that blocked your view of what was coming, forcing you to climb blind, trusting that there would be something worth seeing on the other side. Now imagine walking through this landscape, not with the critical eye of someone evaluating their own performance, but with the gentle eye of someone visiting a place they love, a place that is familiar not because it is perfect, but because it is perfect, but because it is theirs. Touch the bare patches without shame. They are not evidence of failure. They are places where the soil was thin or the rain did not come, and your survival through those dry seasons is itself a kind of miracle, the quiet miracle of persistence, of continuing to put one foot in front of the other when the landscape offered nothing to encourage the next step. Touch the lush places too, but without the frantic grasping that sometimes accompanies happiness, that fear that if you do not hold on tightly enough, all of it will slip away. Good things in your life did not stay because you held them tightly. They stayed because conditions were right and the seed found what it needed, and something grew that did not require your anxious supervision. Let yourself enjoy these places without needing them to compensate for the difficult ones. They are not the point of the story any more than the difficult places are. They are simply part of it, woven into the same fabric, contributing to the same texture. Here is where the love of fate begins to feel less like a philosophical concept and more like a physical practice. It is something the body can do, not just the mind. When you breathe in and feel the air filling your lungs, that is the love of fate, because you are accepting what the moment offers without asking it to be different. Feeling the weight of blankets on your chest and allowing yourself to be comforted rather than restless beneath them, that too is the love of fate. Notice a thought about the unlived life arising and let it pass without following it into its labyrinth of what-ifs. That is the love of fate in its purest form, the simple willingness to be here, in the life that is, rather than somewhere else in the life that was, not. This does not mean you must stop imagining. The phantom selves are part of you, and their visits will continue for as long as you have the capacity to dream, which is to say for as long as you are alive. But the love of fate offers a different relationship with these phantoms. Instead of seeing them as evidence of what your life lacks, you begin to see them as expressions of your abundance, proof that you are a creature so rich in potential that no single life could contain it all. The ache becomes less an indictment and more a celebration, a bittersweet one certainly, but a celebration nonetheless of the sheer scope of who you are. Feel this shift happening in your body as you lie still in the dark. The muscles that were clenched around the grief of what might have been are softening. Not because the grief has disappeared, but because it has found its place within a larger feeling. The way a single instrument finds its place within an orchestra, still audible, still contributing its particular voice, but no longer dominating the sound. The larger feeling is tenderness. It is the tenderness of someone who has looked at their life honestly, without illusion and without despair, and has found it to be worthy of love. Not perfect, certainly not what was planned, and far from what the phantom selves promised, but worthy, deeply and fundamentally worthy, because it is real, because it is real, because it is yours, because you have lived it with whatever courage and confusion and grace you could muster, and because the living of it has made you into someone who can lie here in the dark and feel all of this, every layer and every contradiction, without breaking apart. The night is well advanced now, and sleep has moved from the edges of your awareness to its center. It is no longer something you are approaching, but something you are entering, the way you enter a warm room from a cold hallway, feeling the temperature change on your skin, feeling the tension in your shoulders begin to melt. In this room of sleep, the phantom selves and the actual self are not opposed. They are roommates, cohabitants of the same consciousness, sharing a heartbeat and a breath, dissolving slowly together into the formless dark that precedes dreaming. Carry the tenderness with you into this dissolution. Let it be the last thing you hold before the holding ceases and the hands of your mind open, and everything, phantom and real alike, spills gently into the vast, warm nothing of sleep. You have earned this rest. You have earned it not by being perfect or by choosing correctly at every crossroads, but simply by being here, by showing up for another day of the only life you will ever live, by bringing to that life whatever tenderness you could find, even when the only tenderness available was the kind you had to offer yourself. That is enough. In fact, it is more than enough. It is everything. All night, you have been visiting lives you did not live and selves you did not become, possibilities that branched away from the trunk of your experience and grew into their own invisible trees. Now, as sleep draws closer and the darkness around you thickens into something almost tangible, it is time to consider a different question. Not what these phantom selves took from you by their absence, but what they might give you by their presence. But what they might give you by their presence. But what they might give you by their presence. Because they are present, all of them, not as separate beings in parallel worlds, but as living threads in the fabric of who you are right now, lying here, breathing, suspended between waking and sleep. The self who would have lived in that other city carries within it a particular quality of aliveness, sensitivity to beauty paired with a willingness to be moved by unfamiliar things. This quality does not belong only to that phantom, it belongs to you, because you are the one who imagined it, and imagination is not separate from identity. It is one of the deepest expressions of identity. It is one of the deepest expressions of identity there is. When you pictured yourself walking those foreign streets, stopping at that unfamiliar cafe, looking out from that imagined window at a view you had never actually seen, you were not constructing someone else. You were revealing a part of yourself that already existed but had not yet found its expression in the geography of your actual life. The self who answered the calling, who followed the pull of that deep and unnamed vocation, carries a quality of engagement, a capacity for total absorption in something meaningful. This quality, too, is yours. It did not evaporate when you set the calling aside. It went underground, the way rivers sometimes go underground in limestone country, disappearing from the surface, but continuing to flow, cutting invisible channels through the bedrock of your being, surfacing in unexpected places and unexpected ways. Every time you lose yourself in something, every time the hours dissolve because you are so deeply immersed in an activity that time ceases to register, you are touching this underground river. It has been running all along, fed by the same source that once drew you toward the calling, and it will continue to run for as long as you are alive. The self who is loved by the phantom companion carries a particular vulnerability, an openness to being seen and known in the deepest possible way. This vulnerability is not weakness. It is the prerequisite for genuine connection, the admission that you are not self-sufficient, that you need others not as accessories to a life already complete, but as essential participants in the ongoing construction of meaning. You carry this vulnerability whether you express it or not. It lives in the way you listen when someone tells you something true about themselves. It lives in the pause before you speak when you are about to say something honest. It lives in the feeling that rises in your chest when kindness is offered to you unexpectedly, the feeling of something inside you reaching toward the warmth the way a plant reaches toward light. Each phantom self, then, is not a reproach but a resource. Each one carries a quality that you need, a missing piece of the puzzle. It holds a color that has always been part of your palette, but has not yet been applied to the canvas of your daily life. The work of integration is not about becoming those other selves. It is about recognizing that their qualities are already yours and finding ways, however small, to let those qualities breathe. This is not a task for tonight. Now is the time for rest, for the gentle dissolution of boundaries that precedes sleep, for the loosening of everything that has been held too tightly during the day. But as you dissolve, notice how the boundaries between yourself and your phantom selves become less distinct. In the soft light of approaching sleep, the differences that seemed so important during the day begin to blur. You are no longer the person who chose one path and mourns the other. You are the entire field of possibility from which both paths emerged, and you contain within you all the qualities that any of those paths would have developed. Feel this expansiveness in your body. Feel how the space you occupy in the bed seems to widen, as though the physical boundaries of your body are becoming more permeable, letting in more of the night, more of the darkness, more of the vast and unhurried silence that surrounds you. This is not a loss of self. It is an expansion of self, a momentary return to the state of pure potential that existed before any choices were made, before any doors opened or closed, before the story of your life committed itself to any particular plotline. In this expanded state, you can hold all of your selves at once. You can hold the self who lives here alongside the one who lives elsewhere. You can embrace both the practical path and the impractical dream, the version that was loved and the version that was loved and the version that was not. All of them are present in you, not as competitors for a single life but as contributors to a single consciousness, each one adding its particular flavor to the vast and complicated experience of being you. There is an ancient metaphor that compares the self to a house with many rooms. Most of the time, you live in just a few of these rooms, the ones that are well lit and well furnished, the ones that correspond to the roles you play and the identity you present to the world. But the house has many more rooms than this, rooms you have forgotten, rooms you have never entered, rooms whose doors have been shut for so long that you no longer remember what is behind them. The phantom selves live in these other rooms. They have been waiting there, patient as furniture under dust cloths, for the moment when you might push open the door and let the light in. Tonight, you do not need to push open any doors. You only need to know that the rooms exist, that the house of your being is larger than the few rooms you inhabit during the day, and that the fullness of who you are includes everything behind those closed doors. This knowledge is itself a form of integration because it replaces the narrow idea of a fixed, singular self with the broader recognition that you are a vast and multifaceted being, capable of containing contradictions, capable of holding both grief and gratitude in the same breath, capable of holding both grief and gratitude in the same breath, capable of mourning the unlived life while still loving the one you are living. Let this recognition settle into your body the way warmth settles into cold hands when they are cupped around something hot. Feel it in the center of your chest, where the ache of the unlived life has lived for so long. The ache is still there, but it has been joined by something else, something that does not erase the ache but transforms it, the way adding a new instrument to a melody does not erase the original notes but gives them a richer context. What has been added is a sense of possibility, not the old possibility that pointed away from your life toward other lives, but a new possibility that points inward, toward the unexplored rooms of your own being, toward the qualities that your phantom selves have been holding in trust for you all this time. You are not finished becoming who you are. That is the message the phantom selves have been carrying, wrapped in longing and disguised as loss. You are still growing, still unfolding, still discovering rooms in the house that you did not know were there. The person you will be a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10, will carry some quality that right now exists only as a phantom possibility, a seed that has not yet found its soil. This is not a frightening thought. It is the most hopeful thing in the world, the knowledge that the future holds versions of you that have not yet been imagined, that the story is still being written, and that the pen is, at least in part, in your hand. Rest in this hope as sleep takes you fully. Let the phantom selves settle around you like a constellation of gentle lights, each one representing a quality you carry, each one illuminating a different corner of the vast interior that is you. They are not gone. They are integrated, woven into the fabric of who you are becoming, no longer separate, no longer lost, but part of the pattern, part of the whole, part of the extraordinary, complicated, unrepeatable work of art that is your life. Your eyes are closed. Your body is still. The night holds you with the patience of something that has been holding things for a very long time and will continue to hold them long after you have risen from this bed and gone about the business of another day. In the night's embrace, you are complete, not finished, because completion and finishing are different things. Complete the way a river is complete at every point along its course, already fully itself even as it continues to move, already whole even as it continues to change. Sleep now, with the phantom cells resting inside you like seeds in dark soil, waiting for the warmth and light of some future day to call them up into bloom. They are part of you, and you are part of them, and together, you are becoming something that neither the phantom nor the actual self could have become alone. Something richer and deeper, more fully and tenderly alive than either could have managed on its own. Let us turn now from the phantom selves to the one who has been here all along, the one who has been listening, breathing, feeling covers and pillow holding you, the slow rhythmic movement of air in and out of lungs that have been doing this work since the very first moment of your life. This self, the one that is here, is easy to overlook. It is easy to overlook because it is always present, because it is the constant against which all the variables of your life are measured, because it is so close that you cannot see it the way you see the phantom selves, from a distance, with the clarity that only separation provides. But this self deserves your attention tonight more than any of the others. It deserves it not because it is better or more important, but because it is real in a way that the phantom selves are not, real in the way that this breath is real, this heartbeat, this particular arrangement of atoms and cells and electrical impulses that produces the experience of being you, here, now, in this specific bed, on this specific night, under this specific dead, on this specific night, under this specific tie. The phantom selves are beautiful constructions of the mind, and they have taught you much tonight about who you are and who you might have been. But they are made of imagination, while this self, the one breathing in the dark, is made of something more solid, more immediate, more present. Feel the solidity of this presence now. Feel the weight of your body not as a burden but as evidence, evidence that you exist, that you occupy space, that you have mass and substance in a particular shape that no other being in the history of the world has ever had or will ever have again. Your body is not a vessel for your thoughts or a vehicle for your ambitions. It is you, as much as your memories are you, as much as your desires are you, as much as the quiet voice that narrates your experience from somewhere behind your eyes is you. To be in a body is not a condition to be transcended. It is the fundamental miracle, the thing that makes everything else possible. Every sensation and emotion, each connection with another living being. Notice the sensation of the sheet against your skin. This is not a trivial detail. This is the texture of being alive, the grain of reality as it presents itself to your nerve endings, one moment at a time. Smoothness of cotton or softness of flannel, the slight coolness where fabric has not yet absorbed your body heat giving way to warmth where it has. These sensations are not background noise to be ignored while you attend to the more dramatic events of the mind. They are the foreground. They are what it actually feels like to exist, and they are available to you in every moment, a constant stream of evidence that you are here and that here is a place worth being. Your breathing has found its own rhythm now, a rhythm that requires no supervision or effort, no conscious decision on your part. The body knows how to breathe the way a river knows how to flow, and the sound of your breathing in the quiet room is the most intimate music you will ever hear, a melody composed for an audience of one, playing continuously from the moment you arrived in the world until the moment you leave it. Listen to this music for a moment. Let it fill the space that the phantom selves have vacated. Let it remind you that the most profound experience available to you is not some imagined life in some imagined life in some imagined place, but this one, this ordinary, extraordinary, unrepeatable experience of being conscious in a body that is resting in the dark. Here is something that the busiest hours of the day can make you forget. You do not need to be anywhere other than where you are. You do not need to be anyone other than who you are. The restless seeking that fills your waking hours, the constant sense that something is missing, that somewhere else would be better, that some other version of yourself would be more fulfilled, this seeking is not evidence of a problem to be solved. It is simply the habit of a mind that has not yet learned how to rest in the present, that has been trained by a lifetime of striving to believe that the current moment is always insufficient, always a way station on the route to somewhere better. But this moment, right now, is not a way station, it is the destination. It is where the road has been leading all along, through all the choices and all the detours and all the imagined alternatives. Every path, taken or not taken, was always going to bring you here, into this breath and this body, this particular sliver of time carved out of eternity and given your name. You could not have arrived anywhere else, because this is where you are, and where you are is the only place that is real. Let this truth settle into you the way rain settles into soil, slowly, through many layers, reaching deeper with each passing moment. The phantom selves were necessary companions on tonight's journey. They showed you the breadth of your potential and the depth of your longing, the complexity of the interior life you carry. But they were always pointing you back here, to the self that is breathing in the dark, because this is where the potential gets expressed, where the longing finds its object, where the interior life meets the exterior world and something actual happens. Tomorrow you will rise from this bed and step into a day that no phantom self has ever lived, because tomorrow has not been imagined yet. It will be full of moments that you cannot predict, encounters you cannot anticipate, small beauties and small difficulties that will arrive unannounced and require the full presence of the self that is here, real and embodied, the one that has a body, a heartbeat, and hands capable of touching the world. Not of your phantom selves can do this. Only you can do this, the actual self who breathes. So let the breathing be enough. Let it be the anchor that holds you in the present as sleep takes the rest of you into its dark and comfortable harbor. The breath continues whether you are awake or asleep, whether you are dreaming or dreamless, whether you are mourning the unlived life or celebrating the one you are living. It is the thread that runs through every version of you, phantom and real alike, connecting them all in a single unbroken line from your first breath to this one, and from this one to the next, and from the next into the vast unknown of all the breaths that are still to come. Your body is almost fully at rest now. The last vestiges of waking tension have melted away, leaving only the warm, heavy, comfortable weight of a body that has given itself completely to the surface beneath it. Your mind is quiet, or if not quiet, then at least gentle, its remaining thoughts moving slowly like fish in deep water, visible for a moment and then gone, replaced by nothing, by the peaceful emptiness that is not absence but presence at its most refined. In this refined presence, there is no gap between who you are and who you wish to be. There is no distance between the life you are living and the life you imagined. There is only this, breath and body and dark, and the slow dissolving of everything else into the vast and tender nothing that is sleep. You have arrived, not at a destination but at a state, the state of simply being, of existing without the overlay of narrative or comparison or judgment. It is the simplest thing in the world, and it is also the most difficult, and you are doing it right now effortlessly, the way flowers effortlessly bloom and stars effortlessly shine, held by a night that effortlessly holds everything in its enormous, patient, unhurried embrace. Rest here. There is nowhere else to go. The self that is here, breathing in the dark, is the only self you need, and it is more than enough. It has always been more than enough. The phantom selves were reminders of this truth, pointing always back to the one who was doing the imagining, capable of conjuring entire lives from nothing more than longing and hope, whose creative power is so vast that it can populate an entire universe of alternative realities while lying still in a bed in a dark room, simply breathing. That one is you. Breathing, here quietly and profoundly alive in the beautiful dark. Nothing more is needed, and nothing more is asked. The night has carried you a great distance, though you have not moved from this bed. You have traveled through cities you never lived in, down roads you never walked, into rooms where phantom versions of yourself sat quietly by windows that opened onto views you will never see with your waking eyes. The calling that once stirred something deep in your chest was revisited and honored. You sat with the grief of endings so quiet they passed unnoticed, held the phantom who was loved by someone who does not exist, and met the self your parents imagined before you became the surprise of yourself. All of this has happened here, in the dark warmth of a bed that holds you the way the earth holds a seed, patiently, without judgment, trusting the process it cannot see. Now it is time to let them go, not with force and not with finality, but with the gentle releasing that sleep itself teaches us every night, consciousness and effort loosening their grip, surrendering the need to hold the world together through sheer attention. The phantom selves do not need you to carry them into sleep. They have their own gravity and weight, their own way of settling into the deep soil of the unconscious, where they will continue to live whether you are aware of them or not. What they need from you now is permission to rest, and in giving it to them, you give it to yourself. Picture them, if you like, as lights being dimmed one by one in a great house at the end of the evening. First, the light in the room where the self who lived in the other city has been sitting, reading a book by a window that overlooks a street you imagined. That light goes soft, then softer, then out, and the room fills with the comfortable darkness that is not absence but rest. Then the light in the room where the self who answered the calling has been working, deeply absorbed in something meaningful and difficult. That light, too, fades, and the work is set down, and the phantom self turns towards sleep the way you are turning towards sleep, with gratitude for the hours of waking and trust in the hours of dark. One by one, each phantom self finds its room in the great house of your being and settles down for the night. Your parents' dreamed of child pulls a blanket up to its chin and closes eyes that look so much like yours that the resemblance is almost heartbreaking. In another room, a phantom who was loved curls into a warmth that is imagined but no less comforting for that. Nearby, the self who said yes when you said no stretches out on a bed that exists only in the architecture of your mind and feels, for the first time tonight, at peace. These are not farewells. These are not endings. The phantom selves will be here in the morning, the way furniture is here in the morning, part of the landscape of your interior life. Present whether you are paying attention to them or not. They will continue to visit you in quiet moments and pauses between tasks, during the long exhale of late afternoon, in the particular quality of light that sometimes falls through a window and stops you in your tracks with a feeling you cannot name but recognize immediately as longing. They are yours, these phantom selves, as much a part of you as your hands or your memories or the particular way you laugh when something catches you off guard. But they do not need your attention right now. Right now, the only thing that needs your attention is the slow, sweet process of falling asleep, which is perhaps the most natural thing a body can do, as natural as breathing, as natural as the turning of the earth, that is carrying you through this darkness toward a dawn you will not witness, because you will be somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter, somewhere beyond the reach of thought and longing and the ache of lives unlived. Feel the darkness around you. It has changed since the beginning of this journey. It is no longer the sharp, unfamiliar darkness of early evening, full of the residue of the day's noise and the anticipation of what tomorrow might bring. It is a softer darkness now, deeper and worn smooth by hours of stillness and breathing, the way a stone is worn smooth by water. This darkness is not empty. It is full of rest, saturated with it, the way a sponge is saturated with water, ready to release its gift at the slightest pressure. Let the rest come, seeping into you from every direction, from the mattress beneath you, the blankets above, and the air that surrounds you, warm with your own body heat and the heat of the night itself. Feel it entering the muscles of your shoulders, which have held so much today, and the muscles of your jaw, which have clenched more often than you realized, and the muscles of your hands, which have gripped and typed and reached and carried and are now, finally, at rest. Allow it to reach into the deeper layers that do not have names, emotional tissue, psychic fascia, the invisible structures that hold your sense of self in place during the day and can now, in the safety of the night, let go. You have done something important tonight, looking at the lives you carry that were never yours to live. Instead of turning away from them in guilt or frustration, you met them with curiosity and tenderness. In doing so, you recognize them not as evidence of what your life lacks, but as expressions of what your life contains, the vast, uncontainable potential of a being who is always more than any single path can express. This recognition is a kind of healing, not the dramatic healing of a wound closing, but the quieter healing of a misunderstanding being corrected, a false belief being gently replaced by something truer and more spacious. The truer thing is this: you are not diminished by the lives you did not live. You are enlarged by the capacity that imagined them. Every phantom self you have visited tonight was a creation of your own heart, assembled from your deepest longings, colored by your most private hopes, given life by the astonishing creative power that lives inside every human consciousness. The ache you feel for these phantom selves is not a wound. It is a testament to the size of your heart, which is large enough to love not only the life it has, but all the lives it can dream. Let that be the last thought you hold before sleep takes it from you with gentle hands. Not a thought, exactly, but a feeling, a warm expansion in the center of your chest. The feeling of a heart that is too big for one life and has made peace with that enormity. This heart will continue to dream while you sleep. It will continue to construct phantom selves and phantom worlds, because that is what hearts do, the way lungs breathe and rivers flow, not because they choose to, but because it is their nature. In sleep, these constructions will take the form of actual dreams, fragments and images and stories that make no logical sense but feel, in the moment of dreaming, as real as anything you have ever experienced while awake. Let them come, these dreams, without grasping at them or fearing them. They are the night shift of your consciousness, continuing the work of integration that you began while awake, sorting through the day's experience, weaving the phantom into the actual, making sense of the vast and complicated thing it is to be you. There is no need to supervise this process. It has been happening every night since you were born, and it will continue to happen tonight, with or without your permission, though it works better, like most things, when you are willing to trust it. Your eyelids are so heavy now that the effort of keeping them closed feels the same as the effort of keeping them open, which is to say there is no effort at all. The boundary between waking and sleeping has become so thin that you are not sure which side of it you are on, and that uncertainty is not uncomfortable but beautiful, a liminal space where everything is possible and nothing is required. You are on the threshold of sleep, and the threshold is a good place to be, because on this threshold, the phantom selves and the actual self are indistinguishable. They are all just you, resting, breathing, dissolving into the warm dark. Cross the threshold now, not with a step, but with a release, a letting go of the last filament of wakefulness that connects you to the world of names and categories and clocks. Let it go the way you would release a balloon into the sky, watching it rise, growing smaller, becoming a dot, becoming nothing, absorbed into the vastness above. What remains is not emptiness but fullness, the fullness of a consciousness that has given itself completely to rest, that has trusted the dark, that has made friends with all its phantom selves and carried them gently into the land where all selves merge and separate and merge again in the endless, beautiful, unconscious dance of dreaming. You are safe and whole, all of your selves at once, phantom and real, here and elsewhere, the person you became alongside the people you might have been. All of it is held together in the warm embrace of a night that loves you without needing to understand you, the way the ocean holds every wave without needing to know where each one began. Sleep now. The lies you carry that were never yours to live are resting with you, inside you, part of you. They have been honored tonight. They have been seen. In the morning, you will wake as the self that is here, breathing and rising, walking into another unrepeatable day with all its phantom companions tucked safely inside, invisible to everyone but you, precious beyond measure, lighter now for having been held up to the gentle, forgiving, endlessly generous light of your own attention. The night holds you. Sleep takes you. The phantom selves are at peace. So are you, so deeply and so completely that the peace itself becomes a kind of dreaming, and the dreaming becomes a kind of peace, and somewhere in the space between the two, in the warm dark where all possibilities rest, you are finally, beautifully, fully asleep.